April 21, 2025. Pope Francis dies from a stroke at 7:35 a.m. The world is in shock. But while billions of Catholics mourn his death, a secret war unfolds inside the Vatican. Behind closed doors, cardinals argue about the main issue: who will gain control of a financial empire worth $200 billion? May 7th, a new pope is elected, Leo XIV. The first thing he discovers? A financial hole of 83 million euros. At current rates, Vatican reserves will last 10 years maximum. The clock is ticking. The empire is on the brink of bankruptcy. In 2023, a high-profile trial concluded. Cardinal Angelo Becciu was sentenced to 5.5 years in prison for embezzling $350 million. He took money from the Fund for Helping the Poor. This is the first cardinal in history convicted of corruption. An organization that preaches modesty and humility owns assets worth hundreds of billions of dollars and can't manage them effectively. Today, we'll peek behind the sacred walls and learn how the world's most secretive business operates. What treasures are hidden in the Vatican's underground vaults? How does it earn money, and where does it invest? But most interestingly, how does the Vatican spend its billions? And will the new pope be able to pull the Vatican out of its debt hole and save its financial empire? All this in today's episode. The Vatican is not just a church, but the smallest state on the planet. Only 800 residents, no army, no factories, no airport. But it has treasures that would make the richest kings envious. The Catholic Church has 1.3 billion believers worldwide. Every Catholic is a potential source of income. Imagine a company that has offices in every country, millions of loyal customers, and a product that will never go out of style: salvation of the soul. At the same time, it doesn't pay taxes, has diplomatic immunity, and its own laws. The Vatican has its own bank, the Institute for the Works of Religion, its own currency, its own radio, and even its own railroad, the shortest in the world, just 300 meters. But the main thing is complete financial opacity. Until 2019, the Vatican didn't publish any financial reports. Church representatives said, "We report only to God." When Pope Francis first published the budget in 2019, the world learned Vatican assets exceeded $15 billion. By 2024, it became clear that this was just a drop in the ocean. The Vatican's real wealth could be worth over $200 billion. In the Vatican basement, treasures are stored that don't appear in any reports. The Vatican's secret archives contain 85 kilometers of shelves with documents, some over 1,000 years old. Among them, letters from Michelangelo, correspondence of kings, papal bulls. Just one letter from Galileo at auction would cost $10 million. In the underground chambers of St. Peter's Basilica, Pope Paul VI's papal tiara is stored. 18,000 diamonds, 50 emeralds, 40 rubies. Its insurance value, $25 million. And this is just one of 22 papal crowns. Legend has it that in one of the Vatican tunnels, the Templars' gold is hidden. 150 tons taken from Jerusalem in 1307. Only 3 people have access: the Pope, the Camerlengo, and the Keeper of the Keys. All maps and information about the gold are classified. Perhaps this is the papal asset for the apocalypse. In the Vatican Apostolic Library, you can find Michelangelo's original will. One page at auction costs at least $15 million, and there are thousands of such documents. At the Vatican's disposal are 9 museums with 54 galleries, but the public sees only 1% of the collection. In storage, paintings by Raphael, Caravaggio, Bernini. The insurance value of the Sistine Chapel alone is estimated at $4 billion. And in the treasury of St. Peter's Cathedral, gold coins accumulated over 1,000 years still lie. The exact amount of all gold is a state secret. If you evaluate all cultural values and treasures, the Vatican's real assets could indeed exceed $200 billion. Besides all the treasures, the Vatican has 5 main sources of income. Every year, Catholics worldwide donate money through the Peter Pence program. For example, in 2023, they collected $78 million. Officially, this money is spent on helping the poor and needy. But here's the catch. According to a 2024 investigation, only 12% of this money goes to charity. The remaining 88% is spent on administrative expenses, cardinal salaries, palace maintenance, expensive cars, and servants. When this was revealed, a scandal erupted. People donated their last money thinking they were helping the starving in Africa, but in reality, they were paying for the papal residence renovation. Next, the Vatican owns thousands of properties worldwide: buildings in Rome, apartments in London, offices in Paris, lands in Australia. All this is rented out and brings constant passive income. The most scandalous example, purchasing a building on Sloane Avenue in London for $350 million. The money was taken from the Peter Pence Fund. The deal was conducted by Cardinal Angelo Becciu. The scheme was sophisticated. Money from the fund for helping the poor was transferred through a chain of offshore companies to buy real estate in London. At each stage, intermediaries received commissions and the price was artificially inflated. In the end, the Vatican overpaid about $100 million. The process lasted 3 years, and Becciu became the first cardinal in history to be tried for corruption. In December 2023, the Vatican court sentenced him to 5.5 years in prison. Along with Angelo Becciu, 9 other people were convicted, including financiers and intermediaries. The next source of income is the Vatican Bank itself. This is one of the most closed financial institutions in the world. In 1982, a grand scandal erupted. Banker Roberto Calvi, who did business with the Vatican, was found hanged under Blackfriars Bridge in London. In his pockets were bricks, around his neck a rope. Official version, suicide. But Calvi knew too much about money laundering schemes through the Vatican Bank. He was called God's banker, and his death is still shrouded in mystery. Many believe it was a contract killing. In the 2000s, the Vatican Bank repeatedly got caught up in scandals involving mafia money laundering, financing political parties, and tax evasion.
European regulators repeatedly demanded transparency, but were refused with reference to the sovereignty of the Holy See. Next, the Vatican has a museum money machine that never fails. The Vatican museums are the 3rd most popular tourist site in Italy, after the Colosseum and Pompeii. After the restoration of tourist flows in 2023 to 2024, the museums are visited by about 7 million people a year. A ticket costs 25 euros. Simple arithmetic: 175 million euros from tickets alone, plus souvenirs, tours, audio guides. Total tourism revenue in 2024 was a record $280 million. Interesting fact: the Sistine Chapel alone with Michelangelo's frescoes generates about $50 million a year, more than some Hollywood blockbusters. Not everyone might believe it, but the Vatican also has an investment portfolio in the stock market, and this is the most closed source of income. The Church invests in stocks, bonds, real estate, funds, and even the entertainment industry. In 2022, it was revealed that Vatican money partially financed the film Rocket Man, about Elton John. The film grossed $195 million. The Vatican received $8 million in profit. A film with explicit scenes of homosexual relationships was financed by an organization that officially condemns homosexuality. But apparently, money doesn't smell. And in 2024, a new scandal erupted. It turned out that the Vatican invested in cryptocurrency funds and lost about $50 million in the market crash of 2022. But all this is just the tip of the iceberg. Journalistic investigations revealed many interesting things: secret accounts in Swiss banks, investments in weapons companies, connections with the Italian mafia through construction contracts, tax evasion through complex offshore schemes. The problem is that the Vatican is a sovereign state. Even if international investigators find violations, they cannot enforce accountability. It seems that the Vatican earns on everything and isn't afraid to take risks. But let's now look at how the Holy Church spends its billions. Pope Francis was known for his simplicity. He refused the papal residence and lived in a guest house. But let's look at the numbers. The Pope Mobile, an armored Mercedes-Benz, costs $500,000 with bulletproof glass and satellite communication. Pope Benedict XVI wore Prada shoes costing $4,000 a pair, and a Patek Philippe watch for $32,000. Papal vestments, mitres, vestments, rings are handmade by Italian craftsmen. The cost of one papal vestment can reach $100,000. The Vatican is guarded by 108 Swiss guards. Their uniforms are created from Renaissance-era designs. Each set is hand-sewn and costs $8,000. Maintaining the guard costs $3 million a year. Meanwhile, their main task is ceremonial functions. Real security is provided by Italian Special Services. Annual expenses for maintaining Vatican museums and palaces exceed $50 million. In St. Peter's Cathedral, 11,000 square meters of marble, 44 altars, and columns from the rarest types of stone. Maintaining the cathedral alone costs $10 million a year. Every papal mass is a grand show. A choir of 30 professional singers, orchestra, special lighting, worldwide broadcast. One such mass can cost up to $2.8 million. Interesting fact, an ordinary priest in Italy receives only 1,200 euros per month. Papal vestments for one ceremony cost 100,000 euros. That's a priest's salary for 7 years. Many believers have a question. Why doesn't the Vatican sell off its treasures and live more modestly, as Jesus himself commanded? And the money raised could be used for many good deeds. With money from selling one Raphael painting, you could build 50 hospitals in Africa. A golden chalice from the 16th century? $2 million. The same amount is needed to provide clean water to 100,000 people in Arab regions. UN experts calculated to solve the world hunger problems, $40 billion a year is needed. If the Vatican sells all its treasures, all $200 billion, it could feed every hungry person on the planet for 5 years. 735 million people could eat their fill. But instead, masterpieces gathered dust in basements. Pope Francis left behind a contradictory legacy in financial reform. On one hand, he published Vatican financial reports for the first time in history and created a control system. On the other, it was under him that the largest financial machinations and scandals occurred. The new pope has already faced serious financial problems. In 2024, the Vatican finished the year with a budget deficit of 83 million euros for the first time in a decade. The reasons? Rising costs for trials and compensation to victims of priests. Reform meets resistance. Inside the Vatican is divided into two camps. Conservatives, led by Cardinal Parolin, want to maintain the status quo. Their motto? The Church has survived 2,000 years. It will survive any crisis. Reformers demand radical measures. Sell 10% of artworks, close the deficit for 50 years, but conservatives block any decisions. Meanwhile, the counter is kicking. Every day, the Vatican loses 227,000 euros. So what do we have? The Vatican is a financial empire disguised as a religious organization. Official assets, $18 billion. Real assets, including treasures, up to $200 billion. Annual net income, about $1 billion, and at the same time complete opacity and minimal spending on charity. For the first time in a decade, the Vatican faces a budget deficit and may face bankruptcy. Will the Vatican's new leadership be able to put finances in order? Or will money finally defeat faith? Time will tell. What do you think? Should the Church own billions? Or should it sell off the treasures and direct the money to charity? Write in the comments if you found this story interesting. Subscribe to the channel. There are many more stories ahead about how money and power work in the modern world.